Hello everyone, and welcome to the Quiet Title Home Study Guide. My name is Randy Rosado, and I'm not an attorney, and I'm not here to give you legal advice. However, I am hoping to provide some valuable information about quiet title and about some of the experiences I've had and some of the different things out there to help you protect your home, because there's a lot going on out there that you need to be aware of. And hopefully this guide will take you through. We'll probably be going for a couple of hours here, so feel free to pause the video, do some searches, follow some of the instructions, take a break, what have you. We're going to be getting into some pretty heavy content, but at the same time I think it's broken down in a pretty simple format. So let's go ahead and get started and talk about where it all began, because how did we get to where we are today? And at no time in history has the housing industry been in the condition it's in. Never have we really seen this kind of just thievery going on right under our noses, and really there's nothing that's stopping them. It's really sad state of affairs that despite how much has been exposed, these lenders are going to keep doing what they're doing. And during the subprime days, basically 2000 or 2003 to 2008, there was it was easier to get mortgages. They were doing all kinds of special loans, and it was being sold as the American dream, but it was actually the American scam. Okay, and you might remember when you got your first statement after getting a mortgage, you may have wondered why there was a different mortgage company on it. You might have even been told from the beginning that you might have your first statement with a different bank altogether, because there were so many different companies in there trading loans, and one was closing and selling it to the other, and we just thought it was normal. So I'm sure it was a little confusing when you found the different bank's name on that first statement if you weren't told in advance. And it's just become common knowledge. So that's kind of where it started, at the creation of the mortgage loan, and even before that. But let's talk about what really happened. And no one really wants to address this, at least in the courts and in the lending industry, because it's really part of their scam. But what really happened was the mortgage and the note were separated at the closing, at least in most cases. And this goes back to an 1872 United States Supreme Court ruling in this Carpenter versus Longan, and basically that states that the note and mortgage are inseparable. The assignment of the note carries the mortgage with it, while an assignment of the latter alone is a nullity, which means they're both null and void. So technically any mortgage assignment without the note makes both instruments null and void. Now, are people ruling on that? Or sometimes it's being acknowledged, but it's really not strong enough. And here's what the courts say. And unfortunately, despite this being the case, it's an old case law, and I believe you need a lot more ammunition than this to win in the court. And fortunately, these greedy banksters, they gave us plenty of more ammunition, because they couldn't wait to commit more fraud and misconduct and really do some of these things. So we'll get into the robo signers and the credit default swaps. The Respa and Tilla violations are often overlooked, but that's also where it all began. That's your good faith estimate, your HUD statement, your truth in lending, and all of that. So really, this was all in addition to the separation of the note and mortgage. And the biggest scam of all is really done through the use of MERS. Okay, and I'm sure most of you are familiar with MERS. If you're not, you will be. And MERS is really part of one of the biggest aspects of this whole scam, and we'll get into it. Now, what is MERS? MERS is the Mortgage Electronic Registration System, and this is how MERS describes their own services on their website, and it's hysterical because they justify what they've done and actually try to make it legal, and it's unbelievable. But they say that this is an innovative process that simplifies the way mortgage ownership and servicing rights are originated, sold, and tracked. And they actually go on to say that MERS eliminates the need to prepare and record assignments when trading residential and commercial mortgage loans. I mean, you could decorate that as pretty as you want. That's just ugly. That's basically saying MERS was created just so the lenders could create fraud, and basically that's what happened. So now, getting a little more into it, and MERS also says this, that they're a separate corporation acting solely as a nominee for the lender and the lender's successor. And MERS isn't even registered in most states. They don't even have authority to act in most states. And the whole thing is just a mess. And they even go on their website and it says that this is representative language only. Consult official Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac announcements for specific language for your state. And here, you know, other changes may also be required, blah, 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 blah. So the whole thing is a fraud, okay? And it was really conducted primarily by Fannie and Freddie. They're really the biggest culprits of MERS. And then everyone else kind of jumped on the bandwagon. But and it's funny because they'll continue to justify their position. And this separation of the note and mortgage, the technical term is a bifurcation of the note and mortgage. And they actually go on to claim, despite the 1872 ruling, despite everything that's come out, they go on to say that the two cannot be separated. Okay, so really MERS is just a database. However, they've been paid a lot of money to facilitate this scam, and they're supposed to track the assignments. They're not doing it, and the whole thing is really it is a mess. So they're saying that the database is not accurate, and they actually have the nerve to go back and blame the banks. So basically, MERS and the banks have made it impossible to really determine who owns the mortgage. So who really does own it? Well, it's hard to say because we've got multiple assignments, we've got fraudulent assignments, you've got banks showing up that have no standing, or you know, they think they do, and you know, so it's set up so we could avoid really finding the legitimate assignment. So there's an automatic break in the chain of title. You don't know who owns it, where it's been transferred to next, but this is the kind of stuff that's going on. So let's look at this, because this is Crystal Moore. We'll get more into her. She's a pretty well-known robo signer for a pretty big company, and we'll talk about them in a second. But let's just look at the meat of this here, okay? So now she's signing as a vice president, because that's what these robo-signers do. They're notaries, they work in a title company or just a regular office, and they sign off as the vice president of all these different companies. So here she's acting as the vice president of MERS, who can't really hold your property, yet they call themselves a nominee lender, and they've decided that they do now have the authority. And because the government's in on it and everything else, basically they're going to look the other way, so MERS will keep getting away with what they're doing. It's just pretty sad. So here MERS is actually assigning it to themselves. So MERS, as the nominee lender, is assigning it. Actually, I'm going to correct myself. You'll see MERS isn't even the nominee lender here. MERS is acting as the actual lender, right? But let's go back, because don't they say that they act solely as the nominee lender and lender's successor? Well, look at this. Now here they're the nominee, so MERS as themselves is transferring it to MERS as the nominee for Bank of America, National Association, but there's also World Alliance Financial Corp, which is MERS. You know, so you see how this thing is. This is really what's going on. You just have a bunch of different names, okay? Whenever you see a MIN number, that's a MERS identification number. So if you ever see a MIN number on your mortgage, you know MERS is involved. So on this fraud assignment by this popular robo-signer, MERS acts as the nominee lender and basically does an assignment to themselves. So this is all an inside job, and this is really what's going on every day. Okay, but MERS also leads to securitization, and we'll get more into that. But just to keep it simple for now until we get into that, you'll see that basically when all these different transfers happen, people are getting paid, but more importantly, your title is clouded. Okay, so if these loans are transferred and the right assignments aren't done and the right satisfactions aren't put in place, Any of these organizations can come back after the fact and chase you down. So one thing we have to talk about right from the beginning is quiet title is not a way to just avoid paying your mortgage. It's not just, let me try to get my house for free. It's really trying to quiet your title, trying to get a clear title, because even if you are current on your mortgage, I'll tell you what, you don't even know if you're paying the right person. You could be paying Bank of America when Fannie Mae owns it. We see this stuff all the time. So we've even got clients who file quiet title action while they're still current on their mortgage. And we make that lender aware that, you know, we're going to keep paying you, but how do we know if we're paying the right person? And if we find out that you are not the right person, then we're coming back for that money. And we're going to sue you for it. So that's really, we'll get a little bit more into that, but let's look more into this MERS securitization thing, because these assignments just tell us what's going on. So all you have to do is get your hands on these things, because this is really what's happening. So here's another one of these ugly things, and so now you've got MERS as nominee for America's wholesale lender, and then you've got, they have now transferred this loan to the Bank of New York as trustee for the certificate holders of this asset-backed certificate. Okay, so this went to Wall Street. This fund generated millions of dollars, and then after that, you'll see that they got paid over and over, and you got stuck with the bill. So this will blow your mind, but just pay attention to this, because these certificates were actually Wall Street securities, and they're unsecured, yet now they're coming back and holding real property in them. Okay, so, you know, I'm not here to give you guys a bunch of theory. I'm not here to talk about, you know, what could be. I'm talking about what's really going on out there. This is the stuff that's going on every day. So really, this is, you know, I see a lot of things every day. I've been in the courtroom in, you know, Florida several times, in New York as well, you know, and I'm just communicating with people on a daily basis and negotiating with banks sometimes outside of the courtroom. And this is really the ugly stuff going on. So here, MERS is acting as nominee and assigning it over to Bank of America trustee. You see they signed off there. Probably a robo signer too, but we don't even have to get that far with this one. And again, like I said, taking a closer look, you'll see they give you the name of the asset-backed security, right? It tells you that basically it was securitized and on Wall Street. So now they're not even hiding behind it. Usually, and that's what's happening. So technically, there's a good chance, and this is something that I believe wholly, that this organization doesn't even exist anymore. This trust doesn't even exist. Bank of America is just coming in as the trustee, using that name, and just stealing properties and stealing money. That's really what's going on. Okay, so that's what's going on there. That's a securitization. You can see that right on your mortgage. And how do you find out? Now, there's a lot of hype about securitization, and we're going to get more into that later. We're just going to kind of touch on it for a minute now, because I know many people seem to have a misconception about securitization. They seem to think that this is like the end-all, be-all to getting your mortgage free and clear, and it really isn't. You really have to understand when and why and how to do a securitization, and really the role that it plays in all of this. So, you know, just you have to. It's really a case-by-case situation. So basically, just to touch briefly on it, all of the securities listed with the SEC are tracked by Bloomberg. Okay, so Bloomberg is an actual computer system that really keeps track of what's going on in the SEC, and it's become popular. It's almost become a little bit of a fad over the last year or so, or 8 to 10 months. And Bloomberg's making a lot of money selling these terminals, and people are providing securitization reports that include screenshots from Bloomberg, and you'll see some of that later. And really the idea is to prove some of these insurance policies so that were paid out, some of these what we're going to call credit default swaps. So, you know, we'll get into that a little bit, but you know, Bloomberg, it's an expensive report that people are providing, so it's important to know when the time is right to go in that direction. But we'll touch on that. Now, For some of you who want to try to find it on your own, I'm not an expert in securitization. Fortunately, I've got some tremendous people in my corner that have Bloomberg access, and we have other securitization experts that can find lots of great stuff that have their own systems for doing that. However, you can do some of this on your own if you go to the SEC.gov. They've got their Edgar system. I've messed around with it a little bit. I've heard some people have been able to track down their information. So, and I didn't put MERS on here, but you could also track your MERS MIN number, but that's kind of useless because it doesn't do a whole lot for you. So again, if you want to try to find out information, you go and look up this particular asset and see how you can find that particular security. Okay, so if you're one of those people who wants to kind of dig in, you can get pretty far just messing around with some of these tools. Okay, but let's talk about really the whole issue is having a cloud on your title. So the legal definition is really a document, claim, unreleased lien, encumbrance, or anything that will impair the title or make the title doubtful. And this stuff is usually discovered during a title search, but again, with all of the transfers and everything, these title companies can't even keep up with it. So, it's really, it's needed to resolve. I mean, if you can't get a clear title or you can't obtain title insurance, it's difficult to sell the home, even if you are current. So that's why we always say that quiet title is not only used in foreclosure cases. Even if that loan is current, a clouded title will make it impossible for you to sell your home. Or like I said before, you could be paying the wrong person. Okay, there was a case over in Lee County, I believe, Cape Coral area, where an attorney had purchased with his investor partner, they had purchased a property from Bank of America, given them cash, only to find out that Bank of America did not really own it and just took the money. I believe they got it back. I'm sure there was a process involved, but that's what's going on out there. So again, remember, even if you have a current mortgage, you really need to know what's going on with your title. You really need to look into that. Okay, so it's important to make sure you're paying the right people. Now let's talk about a quiet title action. It's an action to quiet the title, really. I mean, just like we said, to provide a clean title. And it's a lawsuit filed to establish ownership of real property. Okay, that includes the land and the building affixed to the land. Okay, and the plaintiff is going to seek quiet title action, and this is getting back to my philosophy, because again, like it states here, quiet title is necessary because real estate may change hands often and is not always easy to determine who has title to the property. Okay, so it's also called a suit to remove a cloud. A cloud is any claim, just getting into this stuff. So again, it's important to understand really what we're working with here. I've said this a few times, and I'll get into it a little bit more, is quiet title action and quiet title. Quiet title is the act of quieting your title. Excuse me. Quiet title action is the actual lawsuit. However, don't get confused and try to use quiet title as a method for defending your foreclosure lawsuit against you. And unless you feel that that's a good direction. I personally don't feel that it is, unless it's done a specific way, but we'll get more into that. Okay, just like I said, I personally would not use it for foreclosure defense. If you're being sued for foreclosure, you really should focus on getting the case dismissed, and then that will open up the door for you to take to file the quiet title action against what we call these pretender lenders. Okay, so you want to be the plaintiff and not trying to use quiet title as a defense tactic to get a dismissal. And like I said, they give you plenty. Okay, so and there's evidence. Just find the evidence of fraud, whatever you can to dispute the ownership. So focus on the dismissal. Now let's talk about where to find the fraud. I mean, like I said, it started in the beginning. It started right from the mortgage application in most cases. I mean, let's face it, what was going on is people were stating or making up your income. In some cases, there were no doc loans. Could you imagine? That means you didn't have to show any income, so you can get a $400,000 or $500,000 mortgage without even have to show proof of income because your credit was so good and all your trade lines added up. Okay, so I mean, we hear cases all the time, people making $10,000 a month and their income was bumped up to 20 to actually fit them in, so they qualified. Those were called stated loans, stated where they state the income. So really, these lenders created these guidelines, and I was a mortgage broker during that time, and so I'll take some of the responsibility. But it's important to understand that we were working with the guidelines that were provided to us. Okay, and I like to think our loans were a bit more clean, but again, these lenders provided the guidelines to really push these loans out the door, knowing that these people were really being put up in a situation, set up and put into a situation where they were going to fail. So that was really what led to this inflation of the housing prices, and which caused the bubble to burst, especially down here in Florida, places like California. We saw it from one month to the next. Prices were going up, sometimes 5%, 10% in a single month. I mean, it was crazy. So I really believe it was part of their plan. They gave this money away knowing they were going to make money off of it tenfold and turn around and take the properties back anyway. It's just a horror show. But that's really where it started. It started with these loans. We can get into the option arms and the picket payments and the 1% and 2% starts, and that's just icing on the cake. But it really began when these lenders said, we can make up the income, we could overlook a lot of these things, let's just get these loans out to the public. Respa and Tilla violations, I talked a little bit about that. Plenty of fraud will exist there. That's a good direction to go. In some cases, again, it may not be the best approach for defense, but it's definitely necessary because it does involve fraud. I'm not saying it's a bad approach. It just has to be done properly, and it should be done early on. But let's talk about Respa, because Respa is really, it's a government thing, and we'll get more into Respa a little bit later. But this is a law that requires lenders to give the good faith estimate and disclose the fees involved. Okay, so sometimes these fees, if you look closely, these fees were more than they were allowed to charge in some of these states, and sometimes these lenders let them go through. I can remember working on loans and having the files kicked back because the fees were too high because of certain state guidelines. We were doing loans in many states, so it was hard to keep up and the different changes. And again, we didn't think we were throwing on a lot of junk fees, but we were also using third-party services when it came to title companies, of course, and insurances and things like that. But Respa was really designed to make sure that homeowners were not getting taken advantage of with fees and closing costs and stuff like that. So, Respa is a good way to go, as well as the Tilla, or Truth in Lending Act, that was established in 1968, and that gets into some of the different terms and basically understanding the cost for the entire mortgage. So if you have a 30-year mortgage and it's a $400,000 mortgage, well, you might be paying $800,000 or $900,000 by the time 30 years goes by. So that's really what's going on with Respa and Tilla. I mean, these violations are all over the place, so it's definitely something that needs to be addressed. If that is, if that's something that could help your case. There's many other ways to go, and I don't really know for sure how judges are handling the Respa and Tilla stuff. They used to look at it a little bit better, but I really haven't heard much recently on it. So, but yeah, it was really so the lenders and brokers stopped charging high fees and junk fees and things like that. And at the time, a matter of fact, one of our clients, I spoke to him last week, and he was telling me when his loan was closed, they used to do these road closers, what they call. They'd send the notary to their house at the kitchen table, and the notary sat down with him, and he started to question some of the fees. He started to ask some questions, and she looked at him and said, well, do you want this loan or not? And basically he felt that if he said no, he was no longer, or if he asked too many questions, he would no longer have the chance to close it. So he signed it. I believe he signed it under duress. I believe that notary was out of line and she's not a bank representative. But this is the stuff that was going on, and he was probably just happy to be approved and get his money, like a lot of borrowers were, so they looked the other way. Okay, now, again, it's important to look for this stuff. Try to review it to the best that you can to see what you can find on your own, because they do exist, and if you just start to understand some of the fee structures, by all means, I think it's important to show that you were defrauded from the start if that is the case, okay, because it certainly happens. And we'll get more into some of the chain of title reports, but definitely check those fees and, really start from there. If a lot of people don't have their original mortgage documents, but if you do, especially the good faith estimate that the mortgage broker or the loan officer gave you, if you have that, that is a very good way to go, and match that up with your closing statement, because right there, if there's a huge discrepancy, you can still you can complain, and you can point that out both to the lender and the mortgage broker or whoever else was involved. You can pull them in and possibly use that in court, subpoena them, whatever you have to do. Okay, so we'll get more into the legal side of it. Right now, we're just focused on the different kind of issues out there, where to start. So I might jump around a little bit, but again, this is a recording. You can keep going over it, and I think it'll pull together and make more sense. But really, this is your mortgage. This is your property. They're trying to steal it. So look at every aspect that you can. Okay. It should be used. I think it should be used more, but it's not used enough. And I think that's, just like anything, it's how it's being presented to the judges. But let's see some other real. This is some of our own deals here on our own clients, and who really owns the note. And according to Respa, and we'll get more into the qualified written request. Qualified written request is something that Respa created, and the lenders by Respa law have to respond. If they don't, then they've committed a violation. And most of the times they will respond. I think QWRs are getting used so loosely, they're not always taken seriously. But if you do one that's correct, you could really get the lender to spill the beans, as we see here, because Bayview had a QWR, and you see here it was January 27th. They even put the subject, okay, as the owner of the note, and they actually state that City Mortgage is the owner and holder of the original mortgage note. Okay, so they're already saying they don't have the note, yet they're, at this point, we're trying to foreclose. They have been flushed out through the court system, but at this point, this is what they were trying to do. Actually, this document helped us clear that case, so thank you, Bayview, for helping us out with that. And of course, the same letter went to City. So City told us 7 days earlier, right? Because we had Bayview here on the 27th, and then we have City here on 7 days earlier. Well, Bayview said this was released to Bayview. I mean, City said this was released to Bayview back in August of 2009. So who was really the owner? And basically, when I was in court for this one, I just held up each of these two pieces of paper. And I basically told the court, I said, well, if Bayview's denying ownership and City's denying ownership, doesn't that just make me the owner? Give me my satisfaction, please. Of course, it hasn't happened, and but at the same time, it did stop all proceedings. Okay, but look at the assignment. This is the actual assignment for what we're talking about in question here. Okay, so who's telling the truth? Well, City, just like they said, did assign it to Bayview, right? They sold, assigned, transferred, just like it says. So it clearly shows, and I don't have the date, it might be on the next page, but the date was August 9th, as City had mentioned, or August 3rd, 2009. And so why is Bayview denying this? Is it because I already started calling them out on the fraud that they're hiding behind? Because Brian Bly, if you don't know, and you'll find out in a minute, as well as these other people, his friends here, these people are all committing fraud. They're all co-workers in the same company. And you'll see that he's representing himself as a vice president here for City Mortgage. Okay? So they signed it on the 28th day of July. They probably didn't record it. That's generally about a week or two later they'll record it. So it was signed in July, recorded a few days later on August 3rd. Brian Bly was the vice president on this one, even though that's not his real signature and all that's bogus, but you'll see that in a moment. Christopher Jones probably sat 2 desks over because they all work at the same company, and it was witnessed by their other friend there, Vilma, right? So, matter of fact, our buddy Bly has even been in court a couple of times. There he is testifying. Bly works for a famous robo signer called Nationwide Title Clearing. And you'll see here he's been exposed plenty of times, and here's all the different variations of his signature. This guy has signed thousands of assignments for City Mortgage and many other lenders. I mean, you can just go and find them. Matter of fact, they started reporting him back in 2009, even before this particular assignment took place. So they were already reporting this months before this happened, showing that he signed as vice president of Option 1 Mortgage, Deutsche Bank, right? Yet this is just the guy. He's this vice president who seems to be working for all these lenders, but he's a guy who lives in a Clearwater trailer park and works for this Nationwide Title Clearing. So this is what they were doing with these notaries. Okay, so, and believe it or not, it has been reported that this one individual has signed as many as 5,000 mortgage assignments in a single day. I mean, his hand must be about to fall off because that's just not humanly possible. So there's some fake signatures, there's some stamped signatures, there's some digital signatures, and there's just people signing his name. So all this is going on. It's been exposed here again in 2010, Nationwide Title Clearing, Palm Harbor, Florida, and nothing's done about it. And you'll see that these guys are still doing their thing today. It's completely disgusting. So he is actually signed as an officer for more than 20 banks or mortgage companies. One guy. All right, and he's held this position for, I think, nearly 9 years. I'm not sure if he is still there anymore, but they're certainly there, still doing their thing. Okay. Here's his verification of employment. Matter of fact, it doesn't say his position, but it says that he works for Nationwide Title Clearing. So if he's working for Nationwide Title Clearing in the processing department, right, and he's been there since 2003, and this was 2010, how can he have time to work for City Mortgage and Deutsche Bank and Option 1 and all these other companies? Doesn't that seem a little crazy? So anyway, that's from the Human Resources Department. But what's even better is we got a copy, or at least a part of a copy, of his actual oath of office with the state of Florida. You got to love this. This actually shows that he took an oath of office, and it shows his real signature, how it should be. Right? Brian J. Bly, what do you know? I was dying to find out what his real signature looked like, so I almost fell out of my chair when I saw this. So this is really the only signature he should be using. All those other ones we saw here, all this stuff, that's garbage, okay? But got away with it, and still does, probably. I know the company's still doing it. Okay, so there's his oath of office, 2007. Matter of fact, I don't know if that's his original one, because it showed that he might have been, no, that probably is, because he was signing after that. So if this is his real signature, how is this legit? Okay, and then you're going to learn more about Chris Jones, Vilma, and the rest of the co-workers over there. But this is, come on. Here's the other one here. Okay, this is Brian's co-worker, Crystal Moore. We saw Crystal earlier on that MERS assignment, and you'll see she's been in court testifying. You'll see her different signatures, and this is the game. So that's what's happening. And yeah, they're partners in fraud here, the two of them, right? So you'll see Bly signed as the vice president for, who is it? The Bank of America. He's trustee or something, so he doesn't even probably know who he's signing for at this point. Now he's signing as the trustee, I guess, for Bank of America, who has this unsecured trust, right? Again, these things are unsecured. They've been insured by AIG, yet they're the ones holding title to the property and doing a foreclosure. I mean, right? So this one's 2010, and by then there was a little bit of heat on nationwide title clearing. So look what they did. Well, you see, they still show nationwide title clearing, but now they go strictly by NTC, right? Palm Harbor, Florida, all that stuff is the same, but you know, now why not just use the acronym, since your name is dirt in the public and everyone's on to you and attorneys have had you in courtrooms and everything else. So yeah, so Crystal's the notary, Brian's the vice president, and that's the game they're playing. Check this out, they switch roles, right? So now Crystal, I don't know what signature is that looks like a different one. Now she's playing vice president for HSBC Bank, or is it, well, no, I'm sorry, I'm not sure if it's HSBC Bank or National Association, but either way, oh, okay, no, it's the same one, I'm sorry, HSB, that's usually NA. So it's HSBC Bank, National Association as trustee. So she's signing off, I guess, for HSBC as trustee for this trust that may not even exist anymore. This Saxon Mortgage, Saxon Mortgage isn't even in business anymore. So I guess they're acting as the attorney. In fact, the bottom line is no one's calling them out on this stuff. I mean, the trustee for this trust name by Saxon and the attorney, in fact, I mean, are we calling out HSBC and say, look, just show us proof, man? I mean, come on. No one's doing this stuff, you know, and this is what we really have to start doing. So this is really, you guys could find this stuff in your mortgages, and you'll be blown away when you do. And Bly, again, is signing off, and look at this signature. I mean, come on. Oh, God. So, you know, there's the role reversal, and they're doing their thing. So Bly's the notary. And again, we have a verification of employment. Crystal Moore, wait a second, she works here, Nationwide Title Clearing. She doesn't work here? Okay, fair enough. That's where she works, even though she's signing for all these other companies. And this has become legal. This has become lending. I mean, you know, this is no different than Bernie Madoff, what's going on here, except you know, Bernie wasn't sharing, so they decided to take him down, I guess. And you know, I think they all belong in jail. But yeah, so this is she's been doing this for almost as long as Bly, I guess around the same time, 2003 to 2010. Don't know if both of them are still there, but they have new people that have replaced them. And now here's their contract to commit this fraud, and this is really the agreement that these companies sign with these lenders. So Nationwide Title Clearing takes this contract, and then they provide it to Home Bank and HSBC and City Mortgage and all these other ones, and it basically says that all of these people, right, these $10 an hour notaries that they've probably, you know, giving a nice office to just to make them feel good, are the assistant secretaries and vice presidents of home banks. So any one of these could sign at that capacity. So that's what they do. Sometimes Brian's the vice president, sometimes he's the notary. Vilma, sometimes the witness, maybe she'll be the notary or the vice president next time. Right? We saw Chris Jones notarizing a few. I mean, Crystal Moore is another big one. And if you look up all these names, you'll see what's going on here. And this is just one company. This is what kills me. Some people have never even heard of these guys. So this is just one company, which means there's other companies doing this exact same thing out there. Lots of them, unfortunately. Okay, so how do you locate the robo-signers? Google them. Dig. You know, try to find any websites because, you know, people are finding out about this stuff. Look how quick, you know, you Google these names, you see Brian Bly and Crystal Moore still working, right? And this was last year. So they continue to go. Brian Bly is a lie and foreclosure fraud got him. Stop foreclosure fraud. You'll see this. So you want to Google all, I Google all the parties on the mortgage. No matter what position. Anyone that signed and put their name on it, I want to know what's going on, especially if they had an oath of office. Because these people, these jokers over here were all calling themselves, oh, we didn't know. We were just doing what the boss told us. Come on, let me tell you something. When you sign something, and you sign an oath of office, and even if it's a notary and you don't think it's a big deal, it's serious fraud, okay? And I don't care who you are. You could try to play stupid. If you know other people are stamping your name, or there's a machine printing your signature, or people are just signing your signature, and you know that's going on, then I'm sorry, you participated. But nothing's happening. Linda Green, remember her? She was the original one. She was featured on 60 Minutes. There is her, some of her signatures, and of course she's all over the place. She's probably the most famous robo-signer. So, or the original robo-signer, like we like to call her. And this was on 60 Minutes a couple years ago. No big deal. Doesn't slow them down. And, you'll see more on Linda Green. You see some of the stuff she was done. This is her as vice president. Murs is on there, I'm sure. It looked like I saw them. Yep, Mortgage Electronic. Even though it's blurry, you still see it. Unbelievable. And I'll tell you, don't be afraid. Go to the Secretary of State and see if MERS is even registered in your state, because if not, you got to flush them out. I just recently saw a loan with this guy, these jokers over at Select Portfolio Servicing Inc. Here's Bill Cook, or Koch, whatever he calls himself. All you had to do was Google his name. I mean, I looked at the assignment. I thought it was funny. I started digging. I haven't dug too far into it yet because they've given us so much fraud to approach them with. But these are the companies. I mean, this Select Portfolio Servicing, man, they're brutal. They actually work directly with the banks to aggressively take people's homes. And the stuff they're doing, they're calling our client a few times a day, and even though they're in the process of foreclosing in the background, or the real lender is, these guys are asking them for cash for keys, right? That's the new thing. Give us the keys, we'll throw you a couple dollars to get out of our hair because we know we don't legally have your signature, so we'll buy it from you. I mean, that's what we got. Okay, so do a little research, folks. I mean, you'd be surprised what you find. And now you know why loan modifications aren't working. Because the bank either can't or won't modify. Most times they can't because they just don't have the they just don't have the authority. They don't have the legal standing. They don't even own it, right? So they'll jerk you around, and I hear this every day, and this has been called out for years. They keep doing it, right? You send them your paperwork. They tell you they lost it. Please fax it again. We didn't get it. Or, well, you don't quite qualify. Call us after 90 days, right? That's the other one they love. But they never intended to modify your loan from the start. It's a delay tactic. They want you to go 90 days back. They don't care if your credit tanks because they're going to get paid, and then they're going to plan to take your home. So, every once in a while you see a modification, but it's so insignificant. If there's no principal reduction, to me, I don't see the point in a loan modification if your house is upside down. I mean, if you have a $300,000 mortgage and your house is worth $150,000, a 0% interest rate is too much because you're still overpaying. How many of you would go to the supermarket and pay $15 for a gallon of milk when everyone else is paying $4? It doesn't make any sense. So in most cases, they just don't have it, and they want to delay you, okay? And like I said, the few modifications that go through are useless. I've seen modifications where people paying almost $2,000 a month, saving $50 to $100 a month on their payment. That's not helping. They're just set up to fail again. I can't tell you how many loan modifications end up back in foreclosure. It's the lender's way of saying, oh, well, we tried to do the right thing, but you screwed up again. And it's just not even realistic. They inflated the properties to take them, bottom line. So the real money for them is taking the home. And the truth is, it's really not the real money. It's just gravy. It's just insult to injury. And I think that's the killer of it, because when you see how much they made on these securities, they don't even need that money. So, like I said, they're just adding insult to injury and, taking more money and throwing people on the streets. And that's what our country's come to, unfortunately. So, that's why you have to pay attention to the documents. And the thing is, I'll talk more about the QWRs. They'll admit wrongdoing. This one, look at this. This was just a recent one from a couple months ago. Or actually, last month. Bank of America is foreclosing, right? That's their address. You'll see the top of that's definitely their address. You'll see the top of that document on the next page. But here, or whatever they call themselves, and they're so confusing. Why are they changing names all the time? Now it's Bank of America as successor by merger to BAC Home Loans. Isn't that their name is such garbage that they start abbreviating and coming up with all this crap? Actually, they abbreviate it and then they throw servicing in there so that they could say, well, we're just a servicer. I mean, it's nonsense because they are the ones with the foreclosure. And the attorney on this has actually stated, well, the attorney is actually stating that the property is going to be placed into his trust after. So I actually have reason to believe that Bank of America isn't even involved, that the attorney is foreclosing, but it doesn't matter. Look what they tell me. The owner of this note is Ginnie Mae. So how the hell is Bank of America thinking they're going to foreclose? What are they doing? And yet they've given me this information so we could bring it to court, so we could possibly either get the case dismissed or appeal it or file a federal case or whatever we have to do. But I mean, they acknowledge that they don't own this property, yet they're aggressively going after the foreclosure. Either that or their attorney is doing it and looking to take the property. So you've got to prove this lack of standing, okay? So this is the top of that letter. And, actually, well, this was the top portion, but, I actually had to just to show you this was how they finished the letter. I just wanted to put the dates and all the content in place so you understood. But this was by the QWR group, right? So they actually have people that respond just to these letters, and that's what happened here. And we had a bunch of other things we asked, and that's the only thing they've addressed so far. So they're gonna do further detailed analysis, right? Yet someone's house is being foreclosed on while they're doing this analysis. You think this analysis is going to stop? There's a court hearing next week. Then they probably won't even address this. That was just something to shut us up. So, but again, if they don't own the note, why do they have to do an investigation, right? It's Ginnie Mae. So if Ginnie Mae owns it, all Bank of America needs to say is thank you, contact them. But they're doing an investigation. So if they don't own it, why do they have to investigate this file that they're foreclosing on? They shouldn't even be foreclosing. So anyway, this was their response to the QWR. So the QWRs actually do get results. It's just people don't know what to do with this stuff that they give them. Okay, and you'll get some sample QWRs in your documents if you haven't already gone through them, and you can kind of customize those and look for different ones. But it's really important that they're specific. And it's your legal right to access this information under Respa. So, and if you're in foreclosure, be sure QWR gets out, because that stops things, at least temporarily, until things are addressed. And it's very important. So, I'm starting to understand how to utilize that, because I used to just view the QWR as just kind of an introduction thing, just kind of a way to let the banks know that we're here, and I never took them seriously. But when the lenders kept giving me good information to get cases dismissed, I started working with it, because they've got departments of people that don't have a clue, that are just like robots, and give me good information to work with. So now getting the dismissal. How do you get it dismissed, right? You're in foreclosure. You're trying to defend yourself. Well, I believe you need to focus on lack of standing, because most of these banks don't have legal standing. And once you could establish that, I believe, because I've had success doing this personally, I believe this is the first this is the first attack. This is, the first line of defense right here, is flushing them out, but doing it in a way that the judge understands, doing it in a way where they can't say no. See, when I held up those two pieces of paper in the courtroom that said Bayview pointing the city and city pointing the Bayview, no one was going to say anything. You could try to talk in circles, but the attorney sat there with a dumb look on her face, and I took pleasure in that, and I took pleasure in telling her my feelings. So this is what's going on, okay? And we'll get more into some of the different approaches, and again, before focusing on the quiet title, try to get this stuff flushed out. So if you find this stuff that's real easy, and when I say easy, I mean obvious. Nothing's easy, because the courts, everything's crooked. Unfortunately, everyone's in each other's pockets. So you know, and with the exception of a couple of techniques, I wouldn't engage in a new lawsuit without first defending the litigation against you. Okay, so while you're the defendant, don't go around and file quiet title as the plaintiff and think that's going to, offset the other lawsuit, because you still have to address the foreclosure. Okay. However, there is a different strategy we could talk to later that makes that possible, that allows them to go simultaneously. So focus on lack of standing, flush them out, make it so they can't say no because you've caught them with their pants down. More on lack of standing. There's our people. Look at our friends right there, NTC. They don't go away. And this is actually on another one of our clients, and this just happened a couple months ago. You'll love this one. So this is an assignment through MERS for this First Magnus Corporation, who really hasn't been around in years, right? Or they've got some company that's made up for them. So we've got MERS as nominee for First Magnus, its successors, and blah, 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 right? All this stuff. And they're assigning it to U.S. Bank National Association as trustee, successor in interest to Bank of America National Association as trustee, by merger to LaSalle Bank National Association as trustee for WMALT 2006 trust, blah, 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 blah. Wow, that's a mouthful. Does anyone know who owns that? I mean, is it U.S. Bank? They're the trustee, but it's Bank of, but there's a merger, but it's an unsecured trust, so there's really no standing anyway. All we have to know is that it's a scam. You see MERS, you see these guys, Palm City, there's our new robo signer, I guess Carla Murphy or whatever her name is. She's jumped in, and she's the new assistant secretary that's doing the dance over there. All right, but pay close attention to this, because this is just the beginning. You're going to love this one. This assignment was dated on March 16th, so that's when it was created, and it was recorded on April 16th. We're going to pay attention to this. Pay attention more to the March date, because this very same property, Fannie showed up just this month filing foreclosure, right? You got to love this. Fannie shows up to file foreclosure, yet we just see that it was assigned to, I want to say U.S. Bank, I think. We're going to use U.S. Bank for now because it's easy instead of going through the whole daisy chain. So wait a second. If this assignment shows that someone else owns it, how can they show up to foreclose? And this attorney, Popkin and Rosler, well, how can he, and of course this trust already generated millions of dollars, right? So we already know that. But now this attorney's showing up. Now, how can he file a foreclosure for Fannie Mae when they don't even have an assignment recorded? Another company has an assignment recorded, yet he has prepared this foreclosure. So now you've got an attorney that's actually participating in the fraud. He's actually directly involved. He could take 30 seconds to go and find out who really owns it, or whatever, a couple minutes of his time, and there's no plan to do that because he's in on the scam. Okay, and yeah, I can't wait to go at them. So yeah, they're helping the crime. I mean, how can an attorney legally file a foreclosure for a client who doesn't own the note? Don't you think they would at least have to check with their client to say, hey, before we do this, we want to make sure you own it? So this is why I have reason to believe that these attorneys may even be working independently and just taking properties on their own. And I'm starting to see it in county records. I'm starting to see attorneys showing up, popular foreclosure attorneys showing up as trustees on these properties. I mean, pay attention to what these attorneys are doing, because them and the judges, this whole thing is ugly. So we responded, okay, and this property is in a trust, and we responded from the trust, and basically we were going to bring this to everyone's attention. So this was sent to the court based on the illegal foreclosure, okay? So we let them know, hey, we caught you with your pants down, Fannie. We found out that you guys are filing a foreclosure when you have no interest in the property. So someone else owns it. We even sent them a copy of this other assignment, even though it's a fraud. We still sent it saying, look, if this assignment's in place, how can you guys try to take this property? Well, you're going to love this. What they went ahead and did, and you're going to believe, They went and backdated this. They created an assignment, right? Another MERS and all this. They created an assignment on February. They dated it, which I'm almost positive, and I can't wait to get a hold of this notary because we're coming after her. It was dated on February 21st. Isn't that convenient that our date here was 3/16, that this was created, right? Our 3/16 date. So isn't that convenient that they backdated it to February 21st, but you love this, but they never recorded it till the 11th, till after we called them out on their bogus foreclosure. And on top of it, it's the same company. So now you have MERS as nominee for First Magnus assigning it to Fannie. So Fannie Mae had it assigned and U.S. Bank had it assigned. How can two... I mean, this is the stuff that really makes my blood boil. So now you have two assignments on the same property, and Fannie doing their bogus foreclosure and filling in the documents after the fact. But it gets better. I'll tell you why. You know why it gets better? Oh, no, the next one gets better. Okay, I don't even want to ruin the surprise. So let's keep moving along. I'll show you another one of these pretty ones, because this is Bank of America. This is another file, man. Bank of America, right? National Association as successor by merger to LaSalle Bank, blah, blah, blah. Washington Mutual, asset-backed. Fraud, 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 fraud. We already got paid. We made millions. This is an unsecured trust, even though whatever. All right, so here you go. And Bank of America files for foreclosure on this Broward County, Florida property on 10/7/2009. Right? We have a recording date of 10/7, so that's the day it was recorded. Probably prepared a week or two before. I think we've discovered that we've established that that's common. Okay, you'll see technically it was prepared on the 25th of September. I'm not sure. Oh, yeah, I guess that makes sense. It was prepared on the 25th. Put in on the 7th. All right. Albertelli Law. You gotta love these champs. The attorney Albertelli Law in Tampa prepared this list pendant. So they prepared the foreclosure for Bank of America with knowledge that they didn't own the note at the time. And how do I know this, right? I mean, I'm not telepathic. I can't tell you what they thought. But I have to wonder why this same law firm that filed foreclosure, and I hate to keep jumping around, but they filed foreclosure right here on the 7th. There's your list pendants, filed by Albertelli, whatever law firm. And then they realized, wait a second, there's no assignment on the 7th. There's no assignment, so let's go ahead and throw an assignment there on the 27th. Now, I know what these guys would argue in court and probably say, well, technically, the ownership took place on the 25th, even though it wasn't recorded. Actually, no, I'm sorry, that's the list pendants. It was prepared the 30th. All right, so now they're going to say the assignment was prepared the 30th, but it doesn't matter because the list pendants was prepared the 25th. So they actually prepared, they filed foreclosure, and then the same law firm committed fraud by helping them take ownership after the fact. I mean, it's so on the 30th is when the assignment is actually prepared, and it was recorded almost a month later. I mean, so you didn't even, if it was backdated, they didn't even backdate it far enough. So I don't know if they even backdated it or they were just stupid in general. But I can't wait because we're not standing back anymore. Not for these attorneys. So all right. So now, but the bottom line was, if the assignment was already in place, why wouldn't they just record it beforehand? Okay, so, you know, Florina Munoz or whatever her name is, and Roger Berry, and I think he's a robo-signer. There's a lot of funny stuff here. Oh, they'll be hearing from us, and they better have it in a row because, you know, we're coming after people's licenses. This is crap. All right, so here you go. You see it firsthand. This attorney is actually helping the bank commit fraud or, again, working on their own to steal the property, and the bank is just sitting back and maybe getting theirs. Either way, it's all happening, and that's what you got. But check this out. Last year, the Florida Bar made an announcement, okay? So the Florida Bar has a publication called the Florida Bar News. And of course, that only goes out to attorneys, doesn't go out to people like us that aren't attorneys. And the Florida Bar says that attorneys must notify a judge about potential fraud, including robo-signed affidavits and forged notary stamps, even if a foreclosure case is closed and the home has been sold at auction. Okay? Well, these two rogue attorneys aren't doing any of that, are they? They're actually participating in it. So not only did they ignore the announcement by the Florida Bar News, they're participating in the fraud. So guess what? I think a complaint, actually I'm going to say a complaint should, but I will probably say most likely, most definitely will be filed with the Florida Bar. I filed complaints with the bar before, and of course they're going to protect their attorneys. But now these attorneys have actually gone against the Florida Bar, and that's up to the bar to decide how they want to handle it. But I'm also going to be looking for criminal charges. So I am not playing around with these attorneys anymore. I'm going to look to have them disbarred. I'm going to look to have criminal charges and federal charges, federal court cases against them. So keep an eye on these attorneys. Don't let them out of your sight, because they are getting suspended, they are getting disbarred, and I'm going to keep making them accountable. You look at this Connecticut attorney, he was suspended for practicing law for 1 year and 3 months before he can get reinstated. Okay, so keep an eye on them, because they're a major part of the problem. Don't just think it's the banks. Don't just think it's, the judges aren't getting it. This is all an inside job, people. Okay, so it's really important to know what's going on. And check those documents. All right, so where do you start? Really, like I said, the original mortgage paperwork is important. Going through all those property records, finding the assignments, seeing what's happening, what's recorded. And if there's any court cases pending, keep an eye on that information, because a lot of counties will let you search that stuff online. And so how do you obtain these records? A lot of times it's online, available for you. There's plenty of counties that are still doing it kind of the old school way, where you have to physically go there and pay per copy. Sometimes it's just a money-making thing, but either way, we do see that. I know I was working a file in Bridgeport, Connecticut, where I saw that you had to physically go there, and just certain areas. But it's always important that you call them in advance to find out the details. And a lot of times, even if that stuff is not available online, the details in how to obtain it and the contact information is. So here's really what I do. I look for 3 things every time when I'm searching, okay? And you want to find, use Google, and you could find the county websites, and that's how you'll determine how to locate that. So first you want to find the name and property sales history, or at least that's what I do. So I'll go to the tax roll or to the property appraiser. And the reason why that's important, because that'll usually tell you how the name is spelled, so that you can cross-reference it. Now you have to be careful, because we just recently had an attorney purposely, and the foreclosure went through and it went to sale, and it's now being objected, and possibly will have to go to appeal. But the attorney purposely misspelled the homeowner's name, left out the last letter, so that when you copy and pasted it and did the normal search, you wouldn't see that there was a foreclosure. And he went even further. Oh, I can't wait to report this guy, because I'm taking him down too. He went even further and purposely served the wrong address. He served the vacant property that was being foreclosed on, when all the other documents in the case had the owner's primary address as the main address to serve. So sometimes it's not just as easy as copying and pasting that information. So first you want to do that. Then you want to go to the property records to see the assignments. Then you want to go to the get the case details. If you do find, here in property records, you'll find out if there's a list pendants. I put assignments and anything related to the property, but you will find out about foreclosure, and that will give you the ability to search the case. Okay, so like like I said, if the counties don't give you the ability to search, they'll tell you how to get the documents. So here's exactly what I do, and this is what you want to search in Google. And I pretty much do this very same thing wherever I'm looking. And you know, I do a lot of work in Florida, so it's convenient. But I'll just do the county name property appraiser. If I'm in, you know, like I'm here in Palm Beach County, Florida, I'll Google Palm Beach County, Florida property appraiser. And then as you see the little screenshot there, I'll end up on that site. If I'm in, you know, Westchester, New York, I'll say Westchester County, New York, property appraiser. If I'm in, you know, High Point, North Carolina, you know, it's going to check the property appraiser. So that's kind of where you start. I mean, it's not foolproof, but this is really, I'm just really telling you what I do. This is kind of how I do it. And then that's the first thing, right? So then you find the property appraiser and you locate that name. Then you want to find the recording, and all I do is Palm Beach County property record search. You know, Morris County, New Jersey property record search. Sometimes you want to put the state in there as well, because there are many states that have counties that are the same names, but sometimes it doesn't matter. So it's really up to you to decide how your search is turning out. I haven't had problems too much, but sometimes I make it a point to make sure the state is in there. Okay, so that's how you find the actual property records, and that will include the assignments, so you could find the robo signers right in there. That will include the list pendants, so you could find, so you can compare the two and find out, like we found out with Albertelli, that the same attorney who filed the list pendants filed an assignment after the fact. I mean, that's complete fraud. So, you know, this is where you're going to find that good stuff. And then lastly, what I do is if I find that there is a list pendants and there's not enough information about the case, you take that number and you cross-reference it, okay? And this is important because just like I told you with that other attorney, because he ended up winning by default judgment by misspelling the name. So you want to make sure you're looking into your case and keeping up with things, because they will try to misserve you, and the judges will look the other way while this stuff is going on if you don't call it out. So you know, by not properly serving you and doing whatever it takes to keep you from defending yourself, they end up winning by default judgment. Okay, so again, it's those three things. It's the property details, finding out the recordings, and seeing what kind of litigation is going on. Okay, and so that's how that goes. Now, if it is an area where you have to visit the county clerk's office, and they do have, you know, kind of just the old school systems in place, I see that and a lot of the stuff we do in New York, where half the stuff is online, half the stuff isn't. Some counties don't have anything online, and so it really depends on where you are. But it's always important to make friends over at the county clerk's office. Bring them cookies if you're there frequently. You know, find a couple of people that you connect with. If you have someone that's helped you out, try to keep using them. And you know, Mary, it's good to see you, and you know, hope you're doing well. And can I ask you a question? And you know, you really want to build that rapport, because Mary will be your, you know, she'll be a huge help to you. Because don't ever think just because they work for the county clerk's office, or you know, don't let your emotions get the best of you, I guess is what I'm saying. You know, you want to remember these people could help you. They're just employees that are doing their job. They're not a part of the problem. Matter of fact, in St. Lucie County, we were doing some, we were filing some motions up there for a case, and we found that they were very helpful. Matter of fact, we found that some of the court employees like to see when you fight back on these lenders. They don't want to see their local community falling apart and people losing their homes. So, you know, they'll back you up. So definitely, if you're in an area where you have to spend a lot of time there, that's really important. Build that rapport. Okay, because then you could always call ahead and sometimes have stuff waiting for you. I've heard people do that. Now, how do you defend yourself, right? You found all this information. You found out that there's maybe RESPA stuff, that there's robo signers, that there's bad assignments, no assignments, MERS, securitizations. What do you do? And really, there's three options that I believe. There's obviously, if you can't afford to hire an attorney, and you want to brave the Prosay process and do it on your own, that is an option. It's not for everyone, I always say you have to avoid being emotional, and I've even gotten emotional on some of my properties, really one in particular, because it was just really overwhelming fraud. But at the same time, you have to know how to trigger that, because what I've found is sometimes one of the tricks I use is I'll be emotional with the attorneys. I'll use some language and I'll stir the attorneys up. But in the court, it's very important to know how to conduct yourself in the courtroom. So if you are going to use the Prosay process, really educate yourself, and we'll show you how to do that in a moment. Hiring an attorney is one option. The only problem is there's not a lot of good ones out there. So make sure you research their history, and also make sure they are willing to do what you need them to do. Okay, so and then the third option is placing the property into a trust, having a knowledgeable trustee that understands it and protect your estate by and actually moving the quiet title action. So this is the one exception, because now if you've got a lender that's foreclosing against you and your property is in an estate or in a trust, you could actually have a trust file quiet title against the lender if that opportunity exists. So that's something to keep in mind, because you have to understand that there's really a separation from the individual who was being sued for foreclosure, John Smith, yet the John Smith Living Trust or the whatever land trust, whatever is in place, that entity can go ahead and file quiet title action even if John is personally being sued for foreclosure. Okay, so that's the one little caveat I did want to mention, and we'll get more into detail. So the Prosay process, anyone that has never heard of it, Prosay is a Latin term that means for himself or on one's own behalf. Okay, so a person who represents himself in court alone without the help of an attorney is said to be appearing as pro se. When appearing pro se, it's important to understand the rules of the court, put emotions aside. I know I harp on that, but it's so important. And get familiar with your courthouse and how it works if you are going to appear pro se. Understand the paperwork. A lot of counties will have the pro se paperwork right there for you, and some of them will even give training. I mean, I've even seen counties have training videos in how to represent yourself pro se, not necessarily in foreclosure, but in bankruptcy and other types of situations. So the pro se process can be a pretty important one, and it's always good to understand, even if it scares you and you don't want to actually appear pro se. If you're working with an attorney or if you have a trustee, I think it's still important to at least have an understanding of the forms and what's involved. The other thing is, as a pro se litigant or or defendant, you can actually request a hearing in some cases. So go down to your courthouse and find out, if you're in a case and you've got motions and you've got things that you want to be heard, you definitely want to push to request a hearing instead of waiting for them to get in touch with you. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind. Educate yourself. I'll tell you what, some great websites. There's a bunch of them out there. I'll point out a few. ForeclosureProsay.com is a great website. You have sample motions. You have stuff from several states. It's more of a judicial website. Okay, so it's really a lot of Florida cases. I think there's some New Jersey stuff. There's a lot of different cases, but it seems to be more focused on the judicial side. So and that's something that we'll talk about for just a moment. You have judicial states and non-judicial states. Now, judicial states are nice because we have a lot more time, so to have our case heard in Florida, New York, and a bunch of other states. Those are judicial states, where you have states like Georgia, California, North Carolina, I believe, or they may be both. Those are non-judicial states, okay, and the process is a lot faster. So it's very important to know, especially if you're in a non-judicial state, because, for example, we've got a lot of colleagues in Georgia, and it's a fast state, so if you don't know what you're doing, it's really intimidating. not even intimidating. You could just get blown away before you know it that you're in foreclosure. So it's important to have the right tools, and fortunately we do have some good resources in Georgia and some other areas, California, to actually stop the process and then move towards filing quiet title. And I actually have heard in cases in Georgia where the quiet title was filed simultaneous to the foreclosure action. Okay, so again, I'm not claiming to know everything. I'm just telling you what I've experienced and more, and I'm much more savvy on the judicial process than the non-judicial. I've got other people that kind of take on that. Okay, now one thing you want to do is, and there should be a link on the website. If not, it will be there soon, or you can go to Jurisdictionary. If you're serious about doing this Prosay thing, it's definitely a great idea to purchase Jurisdictionary. It will tell you how to act in a courtroom. It will tell you how to speak to the judge, how to object, how to file motions, how to request hearings, all kinds of different things. And matter of fact, I haven't gone completely through it myself. I have to actually get more involved, but I think it's $250, and it's really I can't recommend it enough. So now, if you hire an attorney, remember they work for you. Okay, so if you don't want to go pro se and you need an attorney, and I think that's the way a lot of people go, and understandably so. Because this is some, pretty intimidating stuff. Remember, most attorneys are arrogant, and I hate to say that, and I hate to feel like I'm grouping them, but unfortunately I've been around a lot of them, and they've been to our workshops, and they out there proud of themselves, trying to outdo each other, and it's just, and then I heard that attorneys take acting classes to be that way because it's part of their curriculum, so I guess it all makes sense. But if they're not willing to listen to you and they're not willing to understand this stuff, don't hire them. Okay? And if you've already hired them, then you either need to get them in line or get rid of them. And now, if they're looking the other way and you're pointing stuff out to them, well, it's really, they're putting themselves in jeopardy to have complaints filed against them because they're obstructing justice. So, so again, if you're hiring an attorney, make sure that they're looking to do the right thing, because I'll tell you, most attorneys right now are going to push you towards a short sale, towards a loan modification, or towards a deed in lieu of foreclosure, and that's garbage. They tell you have no case. They think they're doing you a favor by keeping you on the property for another year while you pay them $500 a month, and then they're going to push you towards a short sale because they're playing patty cake with the other bank's attorney. Okay, so it's all a game. All right, so even though it's a defense attorney, don't think he's not playing golf with the bank's attorney on the weekend. I know the judges are playing. I've had one attorney tell me, "Oh, I've got a great reputation with that judge. We play golf together." Oh, okay, that makes me feel real comfortable about everything. So, and I believe in only hiring a flat fee attorney, because if an attorney's good and he's working on a flat fee, then he wants to get your case finished as quickly as possible. See, these attorneys that want to collect monthlies, well, do you think they want your case to end? That's when their monthly payment ends. So how aggressively are they going to pursue a dismissal if that just dismisses their monthly fees, right? So if you have a good flat fee attorney, they'll know how to get that. Well, I'm not saying they will know, but if they do get it done for you, it's in their best interest to get it done quickly. It's in their best interest to get the case dismissed, because they're committed to you with that flat fee. So whether it takes them a week or 6 months to get the case filed finished, they've got an obligation to you. So I think those attorneys are the best ones. But the bottom line is, hire an attorney that you really believe has a passion for justice and is willing to go the distance for you. Because there's not many of those attorneys. I've been in the courtroom. Let me tell you, those attorneys out there that are doing the right thing, they're ostracized in the courtroom. They sit in the corner with the rest of us. They sit in the corner with the defendants and the pro se people. and no one talks to them. The other attorneys don't even address them, and they sit there in the corner and they go through their files and they go present their case. And I've seen a couple of real good ones just, really impress me, because it just makes you feel good sometimes when you see attorneys out there doing the right thing and helping their homeowners. So, try to find one of those people that doesn't care, one of those people that doesn't want to be part of the good old boys club. They don't care what the judges and what anyone else thinks about them, because, they're spending time with their family on Saturday instead of playing golf and, doing that whole thing, okay? So, when you're looking for an attorney, I believe that's what you need to look for. And they've got to listen to you. They have to listen to you, because it's really important. Now, whether you're doing it pro se or with your own attorney, I think it's a good idea to bring your own court reporter. I'll tell you, our friend Bernie, who has had some great success with Quiet Title, he's actually won 3 cases so far. He always brings his own court reporter into the courtroom, and this keeps everyone on their best behavior. And the court will say, "Oh, well, you can have access to the transcript. All you have to do is request it." Well, that's okay. I'd rather have my own person here, because let me tell you, they'll abuse you in that courtroom. That's their playground. That's the judges and the attorneys' playground. That's run by the bar, and again, that's they're all in it together. They're all looking out for each other. So it changes things. You'd be surprised that their demeanor and things change a little bit when there's a third party, there's an outsider that are recording everything that comes out of their mouths. Okay, so keep that in mind if you're defending yourself or even hire an attorney. Now, using trust or placing the property into a trust, again, that gives you some additional options. It's really a field that I enjoy, and it's kind of what I specialize in. And the benefits of trusts are protecting your personal privacy, because really no one needs to know who owns your property. When Walt Disney was building Disney World, if word got out that he was purchasing that property, because they already knew he was building a major theme park, they just didn't know exactly where. If word got out, they would have inflated the prices in Orlando. So he purchased all that property under trust and had different trustees showing up to purchase that property until he bought the very last parcel of land. That's when he announced it. It was too late. No one inflated the prices, and no one knew that he owned the property. Okay, so that's important. Privacy. It doesn't trigger the due on sale clause with the bank. Now, that's not going to matter if the property is in foreclosure. But what that basically means is, if John Smith was going to quitclaim deed his property over to me, and he had a mortgage with Chase on it, well, Chase is going to say, "John, you got to pay us now. You didn't tell us, we didn't know it was going to Randy, and we have a contract that says if you sell it, we're going to have to call the mortgage on you. We're going to have to call the mortgage due." So that's called the due on sale clause. That means that John can't transfer the property to me without paying the bank. On top of that, I would have to be responsible for paying sales tax or dock stamps and things like that, because I bought the property from John. And even if he was assigning his mortgage to me, if that was even possible, it wouldn't matter. I would still be required to pay those fees with the county. So now, if John, instead of quitclaiming the property to me, is quitclaiming it to his own estate to protect it for his family, and he puts it into a trust, to the John Smith Living Trust or the John Smith Land Trust or some other name. I wouldn't suggest using your real name, because that kills the privacy aspect. I just want you guys to understand. But let's say he called it the JS Asset Trust, right? Well, because it's his estate, number one, he's not triggering the due on sale clause, because he's still the beneficiary of his estate. And number two, he's not going to have to pay sales tax or dock stamps, because he just transferred the property to his estate. He didn't actually sell it, so he would only have to pay the recording costs. So that's a powerful thing to keep in mind. And also, a knowledgeable trustee, even if they're not an attorney, may sometimes be far better and than an attorney who doesn't have a clue and is money hungry. Because again, these attorneys, they're motivated by money. They're not motivated by justice, unfortunately. It's no different than our medical industry. It's really a shame. It's about how many prescriptions you could write and get paid on the back end. So that's something to think about. Community Trust Network is an organization that we're involved with, and we're helping homeowners. You can find out more about that organization at communitytrustnetwork.com. And you can go to the library and pick up books on land trust and living trusts and things like that, and get some information that way. Community Trust Network, what we do is we bring estate management to the average family, and because protecting your estate shouldn't be something that is done only by the the wealthy, the Rockefellers, the Trumps and people like that. Trusts provide privacy, but they also separate the trust assets from your personal property, so that limits your liability. Okay. If you have that rare occasion where your neighbor's dog runs across the street and bites a kid who's riding his bicycle, and he ends up on your property because he's trying to avoid the dog, well, your insurance, even if your property is insured, I hear people go, well, that's why I have insurance. You got to read those insurance policies carefully, because your insurance policy probably isn't going to cover your dog biting, someone else's dog biting someone on your property. And this is just one example. But my whole point is, let's say the insurance wasn't going to cover that, and you have some attorney who's looking up that address going, oh yeah, we're going to take it to John Smith. We're going to find out everything he has. Well, if that property is in a trust and they can't find out exactly who owns it, that attorney, well, the attorney's willing to play ball as long as the people are willing to pay, but it's going to cost them because it won't be easy for them to find out who really owns that property. So again, it really is going to protect limit your liability. Insurance is really the best way to protect your liability, but the privacy aspect definitely limits it. Plus, again, it's separating you, the person, from the trust entity. Okay, I can go on with story after story after story. Even the Kennedys were because of that woman who had died in the car accident and tried to sue them. The car was in a trust, things like that. Okay, so and the trustee's job is to protect the trust assets, to work completely for the benefit of the trust, and the property is one of those trust assets. So again, learn more at communitytrustnetwork.com if you do have an interest in this avenue. Now, why do you want to file quiet title action? Again, if you're in foreclosure or not, if the chain of title has been broken, the clouds have to be removed. You won't be able to sell that property. See, even if your house is current, like I said before, if you try to sell that property and there's a broken chain of title, you can't get title insurance, which means you can't sell it, and that kind of screws up your whole plan. So we see this all the time, not even just with short sale deals, but with regular deals where people are trying to finalize these, the sale. They've got the buyer, everyone's ready to go, and they can't get title insurance. Same with some of these foreclosure properties. This is why these banks like short sales better, because if they don't have their documents in place, sometimes they'll try to push for a short sale because they know they don't have their documents. So even if they take the property back as an REO, right, or real estate owned, means they foreclosed. Well, if they can't get a clear title, they can't sell it either. Well, and Bank of America, what they do is they paint a beautiful picture. They go on the newspaper and say, oh, we're doing a good thing. We're renting properties back to these people we're foreclosing on. So we're good people for not throwing them out on the streets. No, you're not. You're just making money because otherwise the property would sit vacant and cost you, because you can't get a clear title, which means you can't sell it if you wanted to. So, of course, you're going to rent it. And of course, they'll pat themselves on the back. Okay, so that's why you really want to file quiet title action. And there are plenty of people out there filing quiet title action and still paying their mortgage. So I really need you to understand that. Now, how do you file for quiet title? I mean, there are a number of different ways. It's not necessarily just doing it as a quiet title action, but I don't have the process for every state. I do know the process for Florida. It is a judicial state, which means it would be similar in other judicial states. But there are also other approaches that aren't necessarily going to be your standard. Like, in other words, for example, this is a foreclosure type of action, and this would be your traditional quiet title in the state of Florida in the circuit court. However, if this was a federal court case or something like that, there are other actions that can be taken to quiet the title that may not necessarily be called quiet title action. All right, I know this is a lot of information, folks, and you may have to go through this a few times. And again, I'm not saying I know it all. I'm just saying that I'm exposed to a lot of different things, trying to share with you some of the ways to find this stuff out there. But here's how it goes in Florida. You have a civil cover sheet, okay, the summons, the list pendants, just like they deliver to you when they're foreclosing, which is the actual, the initial foreclosure. The complaint, okay, the exhibit that would include a copy of the warranty deed, the exhibit that would have a rescission letter, court order, things like that. So you want to really pay attention, and it's not a bad idea to find out the proper filing procedures in your county and state. I mean, it's tough because you hear a lot of talk. Do you do a circuit court? Do you do federal court? I mean, I think you have to really try to go into the circuit court as much as you can, okay? Because I think, that there is some power to federal law, but I think it's also important to understand that the federal law judges are corrupt too, and you still have to have a strong case because they're they're getting bribed and everything else, so they're not always going to rule accordingly. So just keep that in mind. You can get results in civil court, and that's a good place to start. At least that's what I think. But again, find out if you're doing it yourself, get jurisdictionary and all that stuff. But so here's how it works in Florida. You get the civil cover sheet. It's filed by the plaintiff or the petitioner with the clerk of court for the purpose of reporting the judicial workload date pursuant to the Florida statute, blah, 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 blah. That's your civil cover sheet. And a lot of this stuff, you might even find samples of this stuff on foreclosureprosay.com, actually. So it might be good to cross-reference. Okay, the summons or the document given to the sheriff or the process server to serve the defendant. Okay, however many copies will have to go. Okay, so that's the summons. The list pendants is really the public notice. That's when it hits. It gets recorded and it's letting the public know that there is a case pending pertaining to this property. So that's the third aspect. The complaint should have specific things in place. You're going to have they probably want certain font sizes and things like that. So it's important to look at these guidelines, because if you don't have it right, it won't be taken seriously. Or sometimes it could be just dismissed in general. So really make sure you have the signature block is in compliance, the font size, those documents they should be available with your county. So you really want to reach out to your county and find out some of these some of these things, and find out the paperwork, specific paperwork for what you're trying to do. Now what happens after you filed against them? Well, they have 20 days to answer your complaint, just the same as when we get filed with list pendants. It's important to answer within 20 days. It's not the end of the world if you don't. However, you don't want to lose any ground, because if they don't answer in 20 days, we can push to file a motion for default. Okay, and then when that is entered, then we actually file for the motion for default judgment. And then from there, the next step would be to file an affidavit in support of that motion for default judgment. And then 20 days later, like I was saying earlier, you probably should request a court hearing and have that motion heard in the courtroom by the judge. Okay, so that goes back to what I was saying earlier. Depending on your strategy and how quickly you want things to move, because it really all depends. I know we have cases where they move. I've got a few cases now where we have banks that are afraid to come at us, so they'll just leave us alone, and they, every once in a while they'll try to check in, but realize they don't have anything. So now it's up to us to decide: do we want to keep this in limbo and just keep collecting rents if it's an investment property, or living in it, or do we really want to finalize this thing? And I think it's all depends on the strategy, but at the end of the day, you do want to get this clear title. You do want to get this thing to a head. So that's something that has to be in mind. Final judgment. When you show up for that hearing, you want to bring all of your paperwork to that hearing. If the motion is granted, it'll get handed over to the judge so he could sign the order. Okay, and once it's signed, you'll get a copy by mail, and the court clerk will be ordered to record the judgment in the public record. Now, that's basically it. So once you've gotten that judgment, you've effectively won a quiet title case, or quieted your title by this point. And to me, again, if it's not already there, I think it would be advisable to place your property into a trust if it's not already been done. And one of the reasons for that is, even though it's exciting and you've got a quiet title judgment, you should make sure it's done right. And I think the trust protects you a little bit more, because they can try to come back and vacate that quiet title judgment later. Okay, even with, like I said, one friend in particular who's had success in quiet title, every once in a while hears from the bank and has to go down to the court and talk about a case. And when even though he's won the judgment, the bank still does their dance, and he shows up, he shows his judgment paperwork, and nothing really comes of it. So he kind of just goes along with it, but it's really, and then he doesn't hear from them for another 6 months. So they don't really know what to do. So it's important to make sure everything that was done right. Don't play the games that they do. Make sure they're properly served, and proper service is really extremely important, because that's the quickest way to get that, and legal standing, but legal standing is very arguable. Proper service is a great way to get a court case dismissed, and that's the first thing they're going to try on you. Although it's probably easier for them to get it dismissed with you than it is for us to get it dismissed with them, as I'm finding out with one Orlando property right now. So as time goes on, the quiet title judgment will become stronger. So that's something to keep in mind, because there's less of a chance that they'll be able to vacate that judgment at all. And of course, I think the trust makes it much stronger. But we're going to get back to securitization a little bit. I know we touched on it earlier, but really, once you understand the depth of it, many of you have heard about the Bloomberg report, or it's referred to as the Bloomberg report. It's really a securitization report that has these Bloomberg screenshots. So as I mentioned, Bloomberg will give you the details on what happened with these loans and the credit default swaps. And I guess we didn't really talk about that before, and I thought I had that in one of the slides. But basically, and most of you are already aware of this, but basically the reason why the bank wants you to go 90 days back is because those securities, those unsecured securities that they're actually trying to foreclose with, like I showed you, they are being paid in full once those loans are not active for 90 days. So on the 91st day, they get a full payout of whatever the loan was insured for. So if you had a $400,000 mortgage and that's what that loan was insured for, that new unsecured security, then that's how much they are paid out through these credit default swaps. Okay? So now here's the issue. I talked about this earlier. I've seen people try to use these Bloomberg type securitization reports as a defense, and they've used them either too late because there was already a judgment or almost facing judgment, or the judges just don't care. So I don't think this report is the best way to stop a foreclosure. If it's not, if it's your only defense. Now, if you got a pile of evidence and you're just stacking it up, by all means, add that to the pile if you could smack them with it. Otherwise, I think it needs to be to play a different role, because the judges just don't understand it, and frankly, they don't care. They really, I've heard a case recently where the judge said, okay, so they were paid in full. What does that mean for you? You still have to pay what you have to pay. I'm blown away by that. Like, you know, if you have a car accident and Geico gets paid, do you still have to pay for the car too, even though they were paid it? It's insane. But the judges don't care because you know, their pensions and everything are tied to this stuff. So, you know, they want to see the game go on too. You really have to put them in a position to rule with the evidence and with the threat of an appeal, because they don't want their cases appealed. You know, I've had success because I've walked into a courtroom and I wasn't getting far with an arbitration hearing, and I just threw the federal paperwork on the table. I said, well, let's just get this over with so I can go across the street and file this. And they, oh, no, we can't help you once you do that, so let's try to help you. And, you know, sure enough, they perked up because they don't want their cases getting scrutinized. I'm not saying that's the best tactic. I was probably a little immature when I did that, and I'm not sure it was the right approach. It worked, fortunately, and I had strong evidence. But this was a few years ago. I probably would be a little, you know, less, you know, less in your face than I was at that point. So, but it worked. So, you know, it's, you know, whatever works, I guess. So it's a long report. I mean, some of these securitizations are 28 pages long. You can't get to the point fast enough. And the judge, you know, like I said, you know, one judge acknowledged the insurance payout and didn't do anything. So the issue with the securitization report is it's not simple enough. So if you can take that report and simplify your message and get to the point where you're just showing a couple of documents that are damaging enough, that is really, in my opinion, the best approach when it comes to Bloomberg. Okay, so there's the actual Bloomberg screenshot. So as you can see, there's a lot of very detailed information about the money and the security and how much it was generated. But again, you have to break this down and be able to explain it to a judge in a matter of minutes. I mean, sometimes we have 2 to 3 minutes to get the point across. So if you bring something like this in and you don't pinpoint it for him, he'll have a hard time understanding what all of this means. Again, if you're using this as an exhibit as the plaintiff in a quiet title case, it takes on a whole different meaning. So you'll see some of the similar numbers and things like that you saw earlier. All right, so this would be a screenshot from Bloomberg. Now, we also have a different type of securitization analysis. This doesn't use Bloomberg, but it actually it's, you know, geared towards getting the same results, and that's by proving the money that was made. So this is one of those pass-through certificates that we saw, and this particular analysis has details about each security and how much it made, and this is just one certificate. And just to help you understand, there's several certificates in some of these funds and some of these securities. So this is just one particular certificate that we're showing here, and this by itself has generated this much money. Okay, I'm not the securitization expert here. Again, I've got very talented people, but this is basically why your signature is worth millions, because it creates millions. So I'm not that keen on this. I just know that $98 million is a lot of money to be generated, and this is one certificate. So in other words, if you take this number and tie it, this QSIP number, and tie it to here, you'll see how much was generated. So this particular certificate generated nearly $100 million, and it probably contained 1,000 or more shareholders that were receiving distributions. So just so everyone understands, this is really the scam that's going on. So while they're generating this kind of money, they still have the audacity to turn down the loan mod and to try to take your home. I mean, and collect the credit default swap. So, you know, a lot of people, the whole securitization hype is all about the credit default swap, and Your Honor, they got paid. But as we're seeing, it doesn't really matter, because they don't seem to care. That doesn't seem to be strong enough. They're saying, okay, well, so you got paid. What does that mean? Well, it goes a lot further, because what you don't realize is this signature, this was your signature that was traded. you were a beneficiary of that trust at one point before they probably removed you. Who knows if you never signed off? So where was yours? How much money do they owe you? Because if your signature created that money, well, I would imagine you were the beneficiary of the trust at some point. So you need to find out where your money is, because if they're suing you for $100,000 yet they didn't give you your piece of that $100 million, hey, that might be another avenue to approach. I'm not saying this is kind of new waters. We're but this is something that, again, is very relevant and something to pay attention to. So rather than focus on the credit default swap, look for the money too, because now you can prove that it created millions of dollars and collected the insurance payout. So you deserve your portion, and just have them take the balance of whatever you owe the mortgage out of the money they owe you. Just say, whatever, if you owe me a few $100,000, what do you owe me? $1 million? Take the $150,000 out, you're right out of that, and then wire the rest to my account. You'll turn some heads in the courtroom with that one. And again, there's different ways to approach this. So we have resources for you to obtain a securitization report. The Bloomberg reports start at around $850, including the affidavit. They turn around in 7 to 10 business days or so. Now those other securitization analysis with the certificate and the QSIP info that we saw, right? They start at about $600 with the affidavit. I think they're actually $600 flat at this point, but that may change because they're getting very popular. But either way, that's a great report for kind of getting to the point. Those could be turned around in 5 to 7 days. So when you select a securitization, it's really important to know what will work best for your case. It's not a matter of, is Bloomberg better? Is the certificate report better? It's just you have to know what's going to work most for you. If you're working with an attorney, by all means, get the attorney involved. Make sure that he or she can explain that in the courtroom for you. You don't want a report that they're going to fumble with either. So if you're working with an attorney and not Prosay or with a trust or what have you, definitely check with the attorney on that, because that's an important thing. Because if they can't explain it to the judge, then you're in trouble. Now, there's also a chain of title audit report. And we didn't get into this before, but I'm going to get into it now because they have gotten less popular because of the hype for the securitization, and I think this probably isn't a good thing, because I think this is a very relevant report, especially during the foreclosure defense. So where the securitization is really not necessarily for foreclosure defense, I believe the chain of title is, because that's how you're proving the broken chain of title. That's how you're proving lack of standing. That's how you're proving that something funny happened. That's how you're proving that Respa and Tilla violations happened. So plus it's important because I've got a few deals right now. They were never securitized. There are portfolio loans out there, and there are what they call balance sheet transfers, where banks just kind of flip it to another bank, and so you don't see that MERS and you don't see that other stuff, but there's plenty of fraud there as well, and that stuff won't be detected through a general securitization report. So that's why the chain of title audit is very relevant. It will it'll get into the notaries, it'll get into the GFE versus the HUD statement, any kind of truth in lending stuff that might happen or might be on there. Okay, and it's also done by an expert mortgage auditor who has been doing this for. I mean, she leads this department, and she's been doing this for over 20 years. Managing branches, underwriting. She's and this was before the subprime days, where you basically just checked people's pulse or let them fog a mirror and you gave them financing. I mean, she was involved with this business back, when you had to qualify for loans, where everything was full doc the way it is today, probably the way it should be. So, it's a long turnaround because it's a detailed report, and they do keep pretty busy. So it's a 14 to 21 day turnaround, unfortunately, on this report. But and they do have the ability to appear in court as an expert witness. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And this report will identify that there was a securitization. It just won't get into details about like the stuff we just saw with Bloomberg and the certificates. So, it won't give you that heavy detail to give you strong proof. It'll just kind of locate the the security and maybe even pull the prospectus in some cases. Okay, so we could also do a preliminary review, which I think by watching this, many of you will be able to handle on your own. We get a little bit deeper than what we showed today, but for the most part, the preliminary review is really just finding out kind of just an overview of what kind of strategies might be available, and that's a 1 to 2 day turnaround. So it's $150 for the simple review. The full chain of title is $895. Okay, so that's a chain of title report audit. The nice thing is it can be used for defensive strategy and offensive strategy. It can be used, in conjunction with a securitization in some cases, and I hear some people that want to pay for a securitization report and a chain of title audit. Sometimes I think it's overkill, and their thought process is, well, we want to make sure we have everything, and I certainly understand that, but again, you really have to get focused on a strategy. You can't run in 5 directions trying to get a case dismissed or trying to win a case. You really have to kind of have a strategy, a specific direction, but also have the ability to make adjustments as you go along. Now, which report do you use? Chain of title versus securitization. Well, the first thing to do is make sure there was securitization to begin with. Look for MERS. Obviously, if MERS is there, it was securitized. Obviously, if the security name, the trust and the trustee name and all of that, like you saw, those are good signs that they were securitized. Okay. Sometimes you'll see, credit union loans. I mean, every once in a while, believe it or not, I see a good mortgage. It doesn't happen. I mean, probably 1 out of 30 that I look at these days, or 1 out of 50 that I look at these days, might have been done properly, but they are out there, and I have had people, be determined to find fraud, and sometimes it's by a credit union, or it's just a portfolio lender, and it's just a small local bank, and sometimes it's clean, and I have to advise them that nothing jumps out at me, and I might not really want to approach that particular file, especially if there's not a lot of negative equity and it's not way upside down. It just, there are some good loans, so we also have to remember that too. As I said before, there's a chain of title detect securitization. It won't give you the screenshots like we showed, but it will be able to find out, yes, it was securitized. No, it doesn't appear that it was. It's still not as strong as the other 2 reports where you know for sure and you've actually pinpointed the specific information on where it ended up on Wall Street. Okay, so like I said, this could be used to defend foreclosure or win quiet titles. So if used properly, this report can sometimes do a whole lot for you. So in my experience, the securitization is more of an offensive tool. The chain of title can be used for both, depending on your direction. If your direction is to prove that they were paid, or is to prove that, hey, they took my signature and made this much money, then you may still want to do the securitization. But it all comes down to presentation. I mean, sometimes judges won't look at either report. I've seen them turn down these chain of title reports too. Granted, it was very late in the game, and I think that's the one thing to consider. If you show up at a final judgment hearing with a securitization or chain of title report, I'm going to guarantee you, I'm not going to guarantee, I'm going to almost guarantee that it won't be heard unless you address it properly and let them know that you've discovered, new evidence and you'd like to present it. But if you just show up thinking that they're going to look at it without first letting them know or requiring a special hearing, I'm finding out a lot of times it's just they don't even care. So, and the earlier you can get going on your defense or your offense, obviously the defense is most important. The quicker you can respond, the better. You don't want to wait, and that's really the worst thing to do. But what happens if you don't win in court? Because it's not perfect, folks. I mean, there's injustices every day, and the circuit, like I said, these judges, and I hope I'm not putting a bullseye on my back, but I really don't care. I mean, these judges are a part of the problem. I mean, they are really participating in it if you let them. So we have to put them in a position to rule properly, and by doing that, you have to have the evidence that makes them say, I don't want this getting appealed. I don't want this going to a higher court. Okay? Because, and if you don't win, don't give up. Even if the system beats you up, look at what you can do. If they ignore or refuse the evidence, appeal the case. If they don't win the appeal, file against them in federal court. Do whatever is necessary to protect your family's estate, because these greedy lenders, as you see, have made millions already. And then they want to turn around and get a credit default swap and get paid the value of the house. Then they want to turn around and take the house only to let it sit vacant until they could sell it again and make more money. I mean, it's just, when is enough with these greedy people? And this is really the state we're in. So if you don't win, don't give up. That's all I can say. You could object, before you even appeal the case, you could object to the final judgment and all of that. And if they're still going to not hear your objections, then that's when you need to move towards the appellate court. And I'll tell you what, we're seeing some fantastic ruling on appellate courts in the last 6 months. So, that's not a bad place to be, because, we're starting to see some justice there. But look into all of your options, and folks, please keep educating yourself, okay? I hope this was informative. I kind of tried to scratch the surface. I know I threw a lot out there, and you may have to watch this a few times, pause it, look at different things. But, by purchasing this training, you have permanent access to it, and you could, be a part of our blog and have access to the information as it continues to grow. So there are really a number of different ways to reach justice, and as we have more cases that are heard, as we have more results, as we have more success stories within our network, we have more strategy. Okay, so I think it's important to also learn about federal law and how that might be able to help you. So really spend your time on those websites, on Neil Garfield's Living Lies sites, and some of these foreclosure fraud and foreclosure Prosay. Really find this stuff out. But most importantly, and there are some good attorneys out there, but I'll tell you what, don't ever trust any of them. And I'm sorry for any attorneys that, are probably, got my face on the dartboard right now. And I don't mean any disrespect. I have found a few of you, but I still don't trust any of them. If they're not my family member, I don't trust them. So that's just my opinion. Just you could take what you want with it. But I want to thank you personally for spending this time with me, and for your dedication to learning this stuff and making a difference in the fraud that continues to take place in our country, because I believe with all of your help, with us working together, we could help make this a great nation once again, and do the right things for the people. So I really want to thank you for your time in that. And start to enjoy yourself again, because I've heard people who have lost their lives over this through just the stress. I've heard of just people committing suicide because of the economy and what's going on. So really educate yourself so that you could free yourself from this nonsense. And by purchasing this training program, you actually become an affiliate and have the ability to earn a little referral fee by helping others. So, once you help yourself and you can begin making a difference with your situation, hopefully you can spread the word and help others do the same. Okay, so if you want to make a difference today and share this information, see the affiliate details on the website, and definitely make that available. Okay, lastly, I'd like to take a moment to promote my own book project, and I hope all of you don't mind. My wife and I, my beautiful wife Michelle, anyone that doesn't know, she was a 9/11 survivor. She was in the 95th floor of the World Trade Center, and as a result of her being able to escape the burning towers before her offices were destroyed, we met as a result, and fell in love and got married, so on and so forth. Had some ups and downs, but our book Pursuing Your Destiny was released for the 10th anniversary of 9/11 last year. There's a picture of us on the news in Indiana. We travel and we've done book signings, and my wife's a tremendous professional speaker. So if anyone has an interest in our book, it's on sale where major books are sold, Amazon and whatever the other one, Barnes and Noble's website, and the Kindle, or if you're a Kindle person, it's available there too. You could also get personally signed copies from us at pursuingyourdestiny.com. And we're very excited because we were just informed that the 9/11 Memorial Museum will have our book on display as a permanent part of their showcase. And that's really, really a big deal for us. The fact that they thought our book was worthy of being a permanent part of their display. So we're really looking forward to that. The museum is set to open in 2013 sometime. So just a quick plug there. Again, thank you for listening. And again, take control of your life once again, and don't let anyone else determine your happiness, because there's forces out there that don't want you to succeed, that don't want you to know this information, and that don't really care what happens to you once they take your home. So make a difference today, folks. I'm going to thank you for your time, and let's go out there and stop this fraud from happening, because enough's enough. Thanks a lot. Take care, everyone.